Zarathustra and Islam. The casual, unschooled observer may mistake certain aspects of Zoroastrianism for Islamic features. A modern American might even lump Zoroastrianism together with Muslims. Nothing could be further from the truth. Zoroastrians are actually the first great historical victims of the Arabo-Islamic aggression. Here we'll analyze the links and distinctions between Badin, good religion, and Islam, submission. Some people popularly say that Islam means peace, or that Islam is a religion of peace. But the word Islam really means simply submission. The peace in question is that which comes with one's unquestioning submission to the absolute authority. As we learned in historical introduction to this book, non-Muslims were first conquered militarily and submitted or surrendered to the military leader of the caliphate, who was also the religious leader at the first. This was just the military conquest of the Zoroastrian Persians by the newly Muslim Arabs. The Arabs did not require conversion to Islam. In fact, it was at first discouraged because their laws allows for non-Muslims to be taxed at a higher rate. Therefore, the more non-Muslims the caliph had in his realm, the greater his tax revenues. From the Zoroastrians, the Muslims took a doctrine of non-coercion with regard to the acceptance of Islam. It was said, again borrowing a Muslim idea, that the individual did not convert to Islam, but reverted to it because it was the natural state of the relationship between man and God. Nice doctrines, but not historically or practically supported now or then. It is widely believed or assumed that the Sasanian Empire of the Iran was conquered by armies led by the Arab Umar between the years 633 and 651, and that thereafter Iran simply became a Muslim country. This is historically inaccurate, yet it has been made believable through a combination of Western myths and realities of history drawn from the Old Testament and the methods used by the spread of Christianity in the Northern Europe. The Old Testament tries to teach that the Hebrews took possession of the Promised Land by utterly annihilating the local population and replacing it with themselves. This is again historically inaccurate, but it was used, for example, as a myth for the manner in which Christianized Europeans spread across the North American continent. It is a historical fact that Christianity spread in Northern Europe in a draconian manner, which involved military conquest, the subsequent and immediate imposition of Christianity on the entire population. The choice was simply given: convert to Christianity or die. It was also a part of the mythic culture of the Northern Europeans that the population was automatically converted when the king of the territory converted. The religion of the king was automatically de facto, and that of the people, in the theory at least. Of course, this is also meant that if an individual did not comply with the royal conversion, he was not only guilty of heresy, but of treason also. This background of understanding has naturally been projected onto the events surrounding the spread of Islam. This is the use of the misplaced myth. When historical thinking breaks down, myth is allowed to hold sway. This is true on the collective as well as individual level. That myth should hold sway is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it is the goal of traditionalism and the natural spiritual state of affairs. Traditional cultures is described, for example, Mircea Eliade in his seminal myth of the eternal return, or cosmos in history, 1954. The overriding question is, who determines the guiding myth and who gains by its hegemony? What the ancient Indo-Europeans theoretically had and what they struggled to retain was a myth which served the greatest good, which propelled the host culture to greatness and heroism, defended it against dissolution, and valued at the highest level the acquisition of wisdom and justice. In the secular European Enlightenment, the idea of rationally based history as an objective record of the facts of human events emerged. This idea was promulgated as an ideal way to view the past. As it developed, this proved to be a powerful tool in the hands of an educated elite. Armed with a factual or more factual view of the past, problems could be solved and avoided. The famous adage, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it," George Santayana 1905 illustrates the spirit and utility of the Enlightenment view. This model, however, was historically precarious. Its full implementation necessitates the teaching of history to the entire population of a culture. This proved difficult, and in fact, there is good evidence to show that the elite in the West, and especially in America, saw the implicit danger in arming the masses with this intellectual weapon. Generally, quality educated nations are reversed for the elites in America. The masses are fed propaganda. As myth is a more natural way for humans to think, it is proven rather easy to return the masses to a mythic level of thinking. But now, instead of venerable and ancient pardigons, the Indo-European mythology being our own guiding principles, the ruling force of society, economic rule has substituted the ersatz mythology, in which the gods have been replaced by film actors, pop stars, and those who are famous for being famous. While attention is diverted to these figures, the popularly despised politicians and CEOs use the new mythology, which successfully suppresses our true mythology, to empower and enrich themselves personally. Even most educated people today are much more likely to be able to give you the names of the Ninja Turtles than they are to be able to name 4 Italian Renaissance artists. This whole drift is, by the way, what makes the West so despicable to remnants of traditional world, some of which is found within Islam. This digression on the nature of the question of myth and history will prove useful in our understanding of the way in which Islam conquered Iran and how Iran in turn had conquered itself and a whole system. After the military conquest of Iran, the Muslims found it difficult to administer their newly one vast empire. Converted Persians had to be employed to run the apparatus of the state. Once these viziers were in place, the re-Persianization of the country had begun. This was a pattern of historical behavior the Persians had mastered through the centuries. The key cultural elements in Islam is the Arabic language. The Quran is the Arabic only. Any translation is not really the Quran. It is only a commentary. Muslims pray in Arabic only. All of this essentially indicates that the becoming a Muslim means becoming Arabicized. On some level, the Persian intelligentsia was always very facile with languages and dialects in the administration of the empire and the practice of their religion, e.g. Elamite, Aramaic, Greek, Avestan, Pahlavi, and Parthian. The use of one more Arabic came as no great shock or imposition to them. Additionally, the Arabic is closely related to the fellow Semitic language Aramaic, which had been long time administrative language of the Persian Empire. These intellectuals mastered the language and even wrote the earliest Arabic grammars in order to learn and teach Arabic more perfectly. This was necessary because Persians soon began to compose new works in the Arabic language on a variety of topics, e.g. history, science, mathematics, astronomy. Works of Greek philosophy were also translated in Arabic in this time, but the Persians were the first introduced to Islam after the conquest. They must have felt that it all seemed rather familiar. The reason for this is Islam had actually originally been formulated by Muhammad under the extensive Persian influence. An important book entitled The Persian Presence in the Islamic World details much of this. In fact, it could be said that Islam was originally a reception of Iranian ideas and practices into Arabic language and culture. It is thought by some, for example, that the man or angel named Jibril Gabriel, who taught Muhammad and commanded him to recite, was actually a Magian priest. The Persians had long been extremely influential in the part of the world that Muhammad came from. Arabians had made themselves very useful in the major empires at an age as masters of the breeding, training, and management of camels. These animals were essential to trade along the Silk Road, which stretched from China to the Mediterranean. The region of the Arabian Peninsula Muhammad called home Mecca and Medina were one of the so-called intense route up from Yemen and to the Horns of Africa. It was also this route that the frankincense Emir entered the trade routes along the Silk Road. Persians were the main economic force and present in every station along the way. Muhammad would have been familiar with Judaism, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism. In addition to this, his own traditional Arabic polytheistic paganism.